G'day and welcome back to another episode of Richard Does Stuff. Today, as I mentioned in the last episode, we're going to build a turntable. My wife loves making cakes and she's always wanted a turntable to help rotate the cake while she's icing it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to build one of them. Now this should be a fairly simple build, so I'll just quickly run you through what we're going to do. Now the turntable, in order to create the turntable, well, we had a microwave that was thrown out, that died a while ago. And so I stripped it, took some of the parts out, massive transformer, I thought that was really pretty cool. And I kept the turntable, right, which I cut out of the microwave. So we're going to use that to run it. Now on the back of it, this is a is there 21 volts AC, it says. I don't know if you can read that. Let me see. 21 volts AC. Yep. So I need to get a 21 volt power supply. Now I can get it from the transformer from the microwave, but that thing's massive because that transformer also has to power the magnetron that runs the microwave. All I want is a 21 volt feed. Now I've told you that I'm a hoarder. Comes in handy sometimes. So what I found in my block of power supplies was a nice little block power supply. This one is rated at 24 volts AC, which is fine for running this. It's not going to overpower it. 3 volts more isn't going to make any difference. And so I'm going to strip that out and take the transformer from that and build that into my unit. So that'll make it nice and simple. Putting it together, simple switch on the side to run it, and because safety is important, I do love my wife, I like her to hang around, we're going to put a 250 volt fuse. I think there's a 3 amp or a 1 amp in here, I'm not too sure what it is, but it's going to be a small one anyway because this requires very little power to run, right? So a low value one, so if any moisture does get on the thing and it trips it, she's going to be safe, right? So that's the basics of what we're going to do there. Very simply, we'll make a outside of that, so it's only going to be yay high. It doesn't need to be particularly high. It only really needs to be as high as it needs to be to survive to clear the transformer that's in here. And then to dress it up, we're just going to run some aluminium strip around it, aluminum for you guys there in the US, around the outside. That'll dress it up nicely. Might give it a bit of a paint because that's just a plain undercoated white. Now, before we go on, I just want to run through the thing. Cutting this, these 3 edges, that was done with a cut-off wheel on an angle grinder. When I went to trim this up, I thought, oh, I know what I'll do. I will grab my jigsaw with the metal cutting blade and that'll be fine. This is the result of that. It's shaken the thing and it's stripped a lot of the paint and the enamel off it. Now that's not going to really be an issue because I will put something over that to seal it so it doesn't rust. That will be under the strip so it won't be seen. So it's still going to look decent. So that was a learning process there. Thin metal even with a metal cutting jigsaw bit, not particularly happy. So you need probably something a little bit thicker than that. In fact, after that experience, I'm probably not going to use the metal cut on the jigsaw again. Maybe there's a better way to do it. Maybe there's a better jigsaw than the one I've got. Mine's only a cheap one after all. So I might just stick with the cut-off wheel and the grinder. I'm getting a better result. All right. So let's get to building. Right. So before we start, little tip on safety. I prefer to use the face shield when I'm working, purely because putting safety glasses over the top of my glasses when I'm working, I find that a bit of a pain, so I tend to not want to do that. Taking them off and on is a bit annoying. So I prefer the face shield. Now what we're going to cut on today, we're going to cut on this thing. This is just the cheap Aldi one. I've got it set to 45 degrees because I'm going to cut 45-degree angles in them, and we're going to then make our square around that. Once I've done that, then I'll cut the base plate to fit that. Now these are roughly 34 centimeters, 340mm by 320mm. It doesn't need to be perfect, just as long as it's enough to cover off on that base plate. So we'll get that done now. So now we have our first cut done. So now let's measure out our 34 340mm. Which is on the outside part, which was there. That's where I want the cut to be, on the other side. Now that's that way, that's going to go in the other way. So let's get that done. And then, rather than have to go remeasure, I'm going to use this one as a template for the second one. Now I'm moving it back and forwards because rather than move that to the other side, I have another clamp somewhere. I don't know where it is, so we'll just move it, just do that for now. Right, so we have our 4 pieces. Alright, this will be the base plate. This is a thin sheet of 3-ply. It's not the world's greatest piece, but it will do because it's going on the bottom, so that's not a problem. But basically, it's all going to go together like this. Alright. We'll drill and screw that in a bit, but before I do that, before I go and let me just clean that piece off. Easiest way with that, it's a tiny piece. I'm just going to get a knife and cut that off. There you go. Look at that. Now, before we go and put this all together and stick it up, I'm going to drill some holes to put the fuse, switch, and got an O-ring and the cable guide on the side, so it's out the way. So switch will be on the front, fuse and the cable at the back. So let's see about getting that bit done now. Right, so first up we're going to do the back and put the fuse and the cable hole in there. Now I've measured the fuse block up. That is 15mm, right? So I need a 15mm hole. But if you notice, the screw thread on this, let me take this piece off. Isn't going to go, it's too wide to go through there. So what I'm going to need to do is to countersink it. So I've got a room to put that on. So it's going to have to come in that far. So let's measure that up and make sure that we've got it the right depth, and then we'll set our drill bit accordingly. So I need that. So I've got enough room for that. Enough room for the screw to go on. Which means that is about 15mm. So I'll need 15. Once again, Doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be not too far for this to come through. Right, so to do that, we're going to use what's called a Forstner bit, which will leave a nice flat hole, a little pivot in the center that I can drill through for the rest of it. Put that in there. Generally keep a lot of my scraps of wood around to make sure that I always have enough bits and pieces for this, because these can be used, thrown out, cut up, made little blocks out of, whatever it is. So, all right. Now, when you're drilling holes like this, one thing that's important to think about is that set your drill a little bit less maybe than you think you need, because if it's not far deep enough, you can always drill a bit further. If it's too deep, you can't put the wood back. So let's get the calipers, let's quickly measure the depth. That's at 12 mil, so I need another couple of mil on that. Now, easiest way to measure this is make that a bit longer than it needs to be. Put that to the bottom and slide that down. Now, put the hole through the rest of it. Right, so let me just plan. So you're going to sit there. Soldering things together, one thing to know is these brass connectors, they're really good at dissipating the heat, which getting a good solder connection is a little bit painful. But it's important to get a good soldering connection, because you don't want anything that's going to arc or spark. That's how you cause fires. So let's get that heated up and let's get that solder dealt with properly. Don't know if you can see that very well, but that's a nice solder joint there. Always handy, keep a cigarette lighter or so handy in the garage. Just such. Right. Now I'll put that in place and seal it once I have finished connecting it. So these connect to these. The active and live don't really matter at this point. That's why that has two browns coming off it, because the active and live is really irrelevant as far as a transformer is concerned. It's only really important when you're switching. Always switch the live. The neutral stays at 0 and the live flips between positive and minus 240 or 110 if you're in the US. So always switch the live, fuse the live, the neutral doesn't matter. Because this is just a transformer, it's nothing more than a pole of windings, it does not matter which way you do it. So that's going to go into in to the switch up there. This will connect onto this. So let's connect that one up now. But notice I've made sure I put it through because that's how it's going to have to hold together. I will use another of my little doohickeys. Solder connectors, or solderless connectors as they call them. Make sure those wires cross over nicely in the center, so I'm going to get a good connection on the wire itself, not on the plastic. Crimp. And heat. It is clearly a heat shrink material because that is shrinking onto there quite nicely. So we have good even heat all around here. Another crimp. Right, so we have this piece going to the turntable. This is the neutral going into here. The live goes into there. This is the live, so we will crimp the live piece onto there. Right, so that's soldered together, and that is a nice solder joint. clamp that back down, and that will go through there nicely. Look at that. That will nicely sit through there. The switch is going to nicely sit in there. So the only thing left to do is to, when this gets put into here, we work out where that's going to go before we stick it down. I'm deciding how to put it down. Do I use a hot glue gun and melt it down? Do I put a bracket and screw it down? We'll see how we go with that. It's not going to get knocked around a lot, so it doesn't need to be packed for something that's going to be thrown and carried around, but it does need to be secure, so it's not going to rattle around inside. But then this piece will need to be soldered onto here after we put it back together, and then the wire will get soldered to there. So this goes to our fuse. Our fuse has our wire that goes to the switch. So all the electrics are ready to be put together, and we'll do that once we're ready. Now, what I reckon is that this is probably ready to come apart. Take these off. Now that looks pretty good. I'm going to give that a light sand. With a light sand, then I'm going to give it a coat of paint. What I will confess is, as I was moving it around and sanding it, it was starting to feel a little bit wonky. So I've just put top and bottom a staple in each corner. In fact, that one needs to be punched in a little bit. So I want them fairly flush. Not that it makes a lot of difference, but doesn't make much difference because this is going to be beneath the blade, or sorry, beneath the turntable. But I still want to keep it fairly. Right, let's get this painted. Probably do a couple of coats, but first of all, just keep this fairly smooth if I can. Turn that can upside down, spray till it comes clear, and we are done spraying for now. Now there's really not much else I can do for the meantime. That's going to have to let sit. What does it say on this for recoat after 1 hour? So we'll come back in an hour, we'll do another coat. Yep, so we'll give it 2 coats just to make sure it will survive up to the rigours of the kitchen. And then after that, we'll put the base together, and then we'll work on the aluminium angle that's going to brace around the top to hold the whole thing together. And for that, I'll just put some little screws through into the wood to hold that all together. So I'll see you after the second coat's dried. Back in a bit. Alright, that is painted. It looks good. So now we can start putting it together. So the first cab off the rank will be to put the base on. Now I went and found some rubber feet. Rubber feet, so when it's put on the surface, it's not going to move around. All right, so that will go onto there. Let's get some glue onto that. Doesn't need to be too much. Just a simple bead, just enough to hold it together. Put that down like that. It's nice and flat. Now we're going to staple it down. I was given this stapler, a little Black & Decker Power Shot stapler. I was given this, 25 years ago, maybe. I absolutely love it. Getting a decent stapler, it doesn't have to be a power one. I've got a power one over there, but it's a bit flaky. I still like this one. So let's put a few staples in. Right, that is very happily in place. So now, let's get all the electrics put in, and we'll get that happening, and we will be very happy indeed. All right. All right, everything's glued in place. Put a bit of glue just to hold the wires down. That's nice and solid there. So the next thing to do before we try and seal all this up, I've still got this to sort out, and I'll do this later. That's just a pain to do, but we'll get there. So let's plug it in, and let's see if we have a working turntable. All right. On there, and contact. Will you look at that? All right, so the last thing to do, got to fix this up. We need to fix, I've got to fix that, and then we've got to put the stripping around the edge. So let me sort that out, then we'll come back and I'll show you how I'm going to do the stripping. Right, last thing to do is to put the strip that will go all the way around, hold it in place, and we'll put a few screws, corners to hold it in place, and we are pretty much done. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and not cheat, but do this a little bit efficiently. I'm going to try and make one piece, bend it to there, because each of these, I've got a couple of these, each of these are long enough to do half and half, and do it that way, and that should save me a little bit of time, I think. Right, let's get on to that. All right, we are done. Look at this, works like a charm. It's actually got a good bit of torque to it as well. So, but this is so as the cake rotates, you can hold the paddle and smooth the icing out. Got to clean the board up, but we did actually get this finished, and it looks bloody good. So we got the 3 runs around the side, the extra piece on there, it's plugged in, and look at this. And what I did find out, it's going that way. If you want to go the other way, simply push it that way, then turn it on, and it will go the direction you want it to. So it's been an interesting build. I've learned a few things. I've made quite a few mistakes, but I've learned from those mistakes. And next time I'll make fewer mistakes when I try something similar to this. Right. So on this piece isn't quite as neat as the rest of it. So instead, next time, instead of doing the 3 and the 1, I would probably do 2, 2, and get them to join up there. I'd probably make them with a little bit of overlap so I can cut them back to fit. But I didn't do that. So I've ended up with this slightly different looking piece, but it still looks pretty good. It still will do exactly what my wife wants it to do, and that is to turn cakes so she can decorate them. So I hope you've enjoyed this build. Right? We've created something today from scrap. Kept some stuff out of landfill, and we've learned a few things on the way. And we've had some fun doing it. Well, I've had fun. I enjoy doing this sort of thing, and I get great satisfaction from creating something, especially something that's going to have a positive outcome for my wife. All right, so I've had the enjoyment of building it. She's going to have the enjoyment of using it. So that's all I've got for you today, guys. So please do like, share, subscribe. I'm going to try and get to the point where I'll put a video out every week or so, more if I can. But let me know what sort of things you want to see. Let me know, comments, questions. Please don't bother being nasty about, oh, you did a terrible job, you could have done that better. And you know what? If you've got something constructive to say, I would love to hear it. Right? If you haven't got something constructive to say, you just want to tell me that I'm rubbish, well, off you go. Not interested in that. You're entitled to your opinion, but sewing hate, yeah, not there. Like, share, subscribe. Let's see what we can build together. We're going to have some more fun. I've got a whole stack of projects that I want to do, and I will look and see what's going to happen next time. Possibly we'll be making some jigs for the new table saw, because I want to make a few things, and I saw something that somebody did that I want to have a crack at. Is a big challenge, and I'm probably going to screw it up big time, but hey, let's see how that goes. Anyway, till next time, guys, have fun, stay sane. Cheers.